Hey guys, Ron here, and I've noticed that I tend to defend most Pokemon, even the few that I don't like. You see, I even had to instinctively add the word few to show that I like almost every Pokemon. What's up with that? But this video isn't really about opinions. I've compiled a list of Pokemon who seem to make no sense in one aspect or another, whether it be Pokemon that couldn't biologically or physically exist, even within the Pokemon world, or Pokemon with design flaws. I'm definitely ruling out almost all Ghost-type Pokemon, since those usually make sense within supernatural context. We're not talking about Pokemon with origins you don't understand, or odd typings that I've mentioned in this channel before, unless there's a huge fundamental problem with the Pokemon's type, as you'll see in this video. We're gonna try to stay away from Pokedex entries that make no sense, or Pokemon with abilities that are beyond our worlds either, unless these descriptions really aren't exaggerations and do affect the Pokemon's life. But I will pepper in some Pokemon that make more sense after further investigation, ones that aren't technically on the list because they have their reasons, but could be better explained by Game Freak. And I'm not saying Game Freak did a bad job with these Pokemon. I absolutely love some of the Pokemon here. Keep on doing what you're doing, Game Freak. Great mons. Keep it up. Proud of you. This video isn't made to inform you guys about any facts, but rather express my feelings towards these Pokemon, whether or not they are false. But I do have a question about our first Pokemon, Komala. Now we know not to seriously take the Pokedex narratives in regards to the abilities of various Pokemon, but Komala's Dex entry talks about its entire life, so I'm assuming what it's saying is correct. That being the fact that it's born asleep and is comatose until it dies as a result of its diet. I personally have no problem with that since Pokemon are supernatural beings, but how does it battle if all of its movements are apparently a result of it tossing and turning in its dreams? And furthermore, how could its parents consciously give it a log that it sleeps on? I mean, I've had multiple experiences where I was dreaming yet could hear everything that was going on around me. But of course, I wasn't able to act on anything when I was unconscious. But maybe since Komala can never wake up, it gets used to being in this state of awareness, where it could hear what's going on and can act out its will within its dreams, which translate into the real world. You never know, maybe whenever it's using Rapid Spin in battle, it's dreaming about breakdancing. It's possible. The whole video will include my efforts to justify these Pokemon's discrepancies, and sometimes it works. For example, before moving on to our second Pokemon, here's an example of a Pokemon that I used to think made no sense, but could have reasonable explanations. I used to not understand why Florges wasn't a grass type, considering how it seems like upon evolution, the flower that Floette held became a part of Florges' body. But after looking into it, there isn't any clear evidence that those flowers are part of its biology. It's known for its flower decoration abilities, so this could have been a gift that it made for itself. After all, you gotta treat yourself sometimes. Our second Pokemon is Silvally, our silver ally who evolves from type Null once it awakens its true power by bonding with its trainer. But come on, dude, quit joking. What? Stop it. Stop what? I can tell that you're just type Null without its mask. I mean, it's even said in the game that the mask was put on to inhibit your powers. So even before you were named type Null by the Aether Foundation, you looked like how you do now. He's on to us! So that's my problem. How is this an evolved form, and not just a different form of type Null? It's true form. It's not the first time that we've seen this in a Pokemon game. One Pokemon that used to throw me off, but makes sense now that I think about it, is Kyurem. You see, all three members of the Tau trio used to be one dragon, but then they split up, and now Kyurem remains with no truth or ideals. But the Lacunosa legends say that a large meteor fell from the sky, containing a terrifying monster, which we now know is Kyurem. So how does this piece of lore insinuate that Kyurem is from space when we know that it's actually just what remains of the original non-alien dragon? Well, I guess the answer is simply that the legend is wrong and the impact from a meteor was just the impact of a Kyurem landing from the sky after splitting from its black and white counterparts. So since that's solved, let's move on to Slurpuff. It's a dog that looks like a dessert. Other Pokemon, like the animals in our world, probably took on the form they do over years and years of evolution via natural selection, but I find it hard to believe that Slurpuff has an evolutionary reason for looking like this. There are other Pokemon that look like man-made objects, but may have actually been the inspiration for those objects, like how ice cream in the Pokemon world is based on Vanillish's shape, which could have naturally formed to look like this since it's basically a floating icicle. The alphabet could have been inspired by Unknown. Gears from Klinklang and even Sock's body patterns could have inspired Karate Gis. But I'm sure that that's not the case with Slurpuff. On the other side, what kind of idiot would breed a dog to look like this? Why not make it look like this? This is worth many generations of forced selective breeding. Another Pokemon that I thought didn't make sense, but I guess is kinda possible, is Dugtrio. It's clearly 3 Diglets. How does inviting your friend over equal evolution? How is this one being? Similar Pokemon to Dugtrio make more sense. Dodrio was already born with an extra head. Magneton is a magnet, and you know, magnets do what magnets do. They attract. but it's stated that the three heads do share a body, so I guess it's just as messed up as Dodrio. But the daddy of all issues goes to Absol. This Pokemon is a dark type, but clearly isn't at the same time. I understand that the humans of the Pokemon world believe that this Pokemon is a Doombringer, when in fact this Pokemon can sense disasters and even tries to warn people about it. So was the dark type thrust upon it by scientists who didn't know better? I'd expect that if it wasn't for the fact that this Pokemon's weaknesses are dictated by its type. Does it make sense for this Pokemon to be weak to bugs just because Pokemon biologists said so? If it's naturally dark, then is it the only Pokemon to not have an actual reason for being so, aside for being mistaken as one? The world will never know. But we do know why Remoraid evolves into Octillery. By now, I've mentioned it at least 5 times on this channel how Remoraid is a gun and Octillery is a tank, but I still find it incredibly far-fetched that a fish turns into a mollusk. Sure, other Pokemon evolve into other species, but they're usually relatively closely related. Even Magikarp and Gyarados are still technically fish, and Goodra is basically a slug in the shape of a dragon, so it's not far off from Sliggoo. But this evolution line is as weird as a frog Pokemon evolving into a turtle, but Game Freak's logic is still present. Unlike our 5th Pokemon, Cubone, who is born with the skull of its mother, who is alive, cause she is my beloved Marowak that I placed in the daycare. Cubone is definitely an example of a Pokemon with amazing lore, one of the most creative Pokemon, but Game Freak ultimately sacrificed logic once Gen 2 and its breeding mechanic popped up. Any Cubone with a visibly present mother makes little sense now, unless that skull is just part of an exoskeleton that this Pokemon develops in the womb. I don't know anymore, at least its birth is not as freaky as our 6th Pokemon, Kangaskhan, which is born with a baby. That makes no sense at all! They really didn't think this through. They could have made it babyless upon hatching and then having a baby appear once it hits a certain level. You know, like in real life. What, a baby didn't magically appear in your pouch once you hit age 16? No? Just me? Okay. At least I wasn't born with a rock in my pouch like Happiny. Of course, while I don't have time to explain why all Pokemon you think don't make sense are actually pretty coherent, I can give a minor explanation as to why a few Pokemon gain objects as part of their anatomy upon evolution. Machoke's underwear isn't underwear, it's confirmed that it's just part of its body and not a separate object. Same with Jinx and other clothes-wearing Pokemon. As for Pokemon that gain objects that aren't part of their bodies like Braixen, Girder, and Hypno, I guess in a perfect world it's implied that they find it somewhere. But the games and anime just don't really try to make it look like these objects don't just appear once the Pokemon evolves. These Pokemon aren't on the list because it's not as atrocious as being born with an object. Kadabra's spoon can even be explained by it having psychic powers and therefore alchemical abilities, allowing it to draw in whatever iron is in the area or even in its blood, and create a spoon using alchemy upon evolution. But our 7th Pokemon doesn't know alchemy. Meowth isn't a psychic type or steel type, so why is it able to create coins out of thin air? I understand its origin and the influence it had on this attack, but how could a Pokemon scientist explain such a phenomenon? Payday is weird. It's weird. Ew. Our 8th Pokemon also creates things out of thin air. Metang evolves when 2 Beldum fuse together, and Metagross is supposed to be 2 Metang, but like, it's not. There are other Pokemon that need to have another Pokemon in the party in order to evolve, and Beldum is not one of them. So how does our Iron Pseudo-Legendary here evolve whenever we are playing in-game? Does it create another one of itself? At least Metang is a Psychic and Steel type, so with a little creativity, I'm sure this Pokemon could pull in any metal in the area and create another Metang. Did I solve the mystery? You decide. Number 9 has to go to Houndoom. The reason why is pretty simple. Maybe you can guess it. It has to do with its ability to hear the commands of its trainer during battle. I'll give you a second. Did you just notice that Houndoom ain't got no ears? It's pretty uncanny once you notice. So this spot can be shared with any Pokemon that has no ability to listen to its trainer, yet somehow can. I'm sure Starfish don't have any auditory organs, although Starmie is psychic, so it gets a pass. Maybe one of these holes on Hippowdon allows vibrations to be converted into hearing, but the only holes on Pukumuku seem to be its eyes and mouth, so I'm assuming it can't hear either. And number 10 goes to Bayonet. We all know its deal, and if you don't, sit down and let me tell you its story. But it's not a bedtime story, because this tale is creepy. It's a doll that came to life after being thrown out by its owner, and now it seeks revenge. This piece of lore could be fine if there was only one Bayonet in existence, and it was some kind of legendary or mythical Pokemon. But you find hundreds of them right here. How many terrible children are there in Hoenn, and why do all of them have the exact same doll? And if it starts out as a Shuppet, how did it evolve into a Pokemon with a completely different backstory and motivation? Maybe one of you guys can explain it in the comment section below. This video wasn't meant to teach, but to entertain and spark a conversation as to how to clear up these inaccuracies. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want more. Click the bell next to the sub button if you're a big time subscriber, and check the description for all the music I used, my Twitter, which you need to follow, the t-shirts I made for you guys, and my Patreon, where you can help out for some cool rewards. I'll see you guys very soon.